whereas women may be still shamed for it or expected to save themselves for marriage. A woman's character may be questioned if she drinks, smokes, or has casual encounters, whereas for a man, that's not the same thing. And I think that, in fact, men are sort of encouraged to talk about these manly pursuits or even brag about them, as we've seen in recent news stories. Now, I want to talk about honor, because I feel like a lot of patriarchy is around honor, and honor that a woman is expected to sort of carry for herself or for her family, and even maybe for her community, especially as it pertains to rape. Activist and feminist Gamal Bassin had said at one point, when I'm raped, people say I lost my honor. She says, how did I lose it? My honor isn't located in my vagina. And I think that that's the thing, right? Is that patriarchy has decided that when something like this happens, a woman, a victim, has lost her honor and has compromised her family's honor. As Hamal ma'am, I'm sure we'll talk about, and maybe Santoshi ma'am as well, in terms of the legal system, oftentimes the best defense is to question a woman's character, to question what she wore, why she was out, was she drinking, what was happening, what did she do that brought upon this behavior, what did she do that may have been wrong or shameful. The typical victim blaming that we see in society as well as in media. And obviously that is further traumatizing from the rape itself. It's a secondary type of trauma that happens after the rape itself. And there's none of this talk of shame or dishonor with regards to the rapist. For decades, even in Hindi movies, I'm sure maybe the students are a bit young, but for decades, right, in the 80s and 90s, I think so many movies, Hindi movies especially, portrayed rape scenes. And the way that the rape scene was sort of, or the rape was dealt with, is that she had two sort of socially acceptable options for herself. She could either commit suicide with the idea that this thing that had happened to her was so terrible that that was the only way out, or she had to marry her rapist, which would then obviously just perpetuate the abuse and trauma brought to her. Now, I think that, so we talk about patriarchy as it affects women, and I think that we have to talk about it as it affects men too, because I think what it does is it creates an expectation of an unhealthy standard of masculinity, what we hear all the time in social media these days called toxic masculinity. So what happens is men are expected to be strong. They're expected to be a good provider. They're told that showing emotion is a weak thing. To cry is not acceptable. That they should look a certain way, have a certain body type, wear certain clothes, and in no way at all should they act like a girl, right? So that's where the misogyny comes in with the patriarchy. And if they do, they're often abused with homophobic or transphobic slurs and language. And I think because of this toxic masculinity and the expectation that they are supposed to be this virile man, when there's a rejection by a woman, it's taken as an insult. It's taken as a personal attack, which then justifies behavior like spreading false rumors, slut shaming, cyber stalking, and even something as far as obviously acid attacks, which we hear about in the news often, and further sexual assaults. And I think that connected to this is also this misconception that a no can be sort of reinterpreted as a yes, with the idea that a woman is being shy or coy. And this is definitely perpetuated, I think, in maybe not in recent Hindi movies, I'm not sure, but definitely in movies of the past decade or two. This is certainly a thing where, there was a lot of eve teasing and catcalling as a means to respond to her playing hard to get, not respecting that she's saying no, not respecting that she's not interested in pursuing this relationship, and then how it further sort of perpetuates itself. Just in wrapping up, I want to talk a little bit about feminism, because I think that obviously you can't talk about patriarchy without talking about feminism. And feminism is basically the belief that women should get the same rights and opportunities as men in political, economic, social, cultural, and personal spheres. So essentially equality between men and women. And I think there's a lot of myths of feminism as I look at social media, especially, and I look at these young influencers that talk about feminism and talk about patriarchy. I notice that there's a lot of myths about feminism that, and I'd like to clear some of those up. So one is that feminism is not about hating men. Feminism is obviously not about women being better than men. It's not that feminists don't value the institution of marriage. It's not that men can't be feminist. And obviously, there are some also that believe that there's no need for feminism anymore because men and women are now equal, which we obviously know is not the case, at least not right now. So, and the other thing that's connected to this, I think, is that people in sort of generation, the millennial generation, Generation Z, there's sort of a backlash that may be happening in terms of women who choose to be at home versus women who choose to work outside of the home. And the idea that if you're a feminist, you wouldn't choose to be inside the home, or you wouldn't choose to be a housewife or choose to be a stay-at-home mother. And obviously that's very untrue. The whole issue is about choice, right? It's about choosing to do what you want, choosing to find what fulfills you, and choosing to make opportunities for yourself in the arena or the sphere that you see fit. I just want to talk about two media examples of feminism before I wrap up. One was in the movie Dil Dhadakne Do. One male character proudly states that unlike past generations in his family, he allowed, and I put that in quotes because that's what the language in the movie was, he allowed his wife to start her own business. And another male character then responds that being a supporter of women's empowerment means that women don't need permission to work or pursue their own interests. And then also there was a recent movie called Thappad that came out. And obviously the movie was about domestic violence and the spectrum of domestic violence, but I think it also gave a perspective on how women normalize and internalize these patriarchal ideas, because the idea is that if you hear about something and you see it around you and the message is either explicit or implicitly everywhere and ubiquitous, you begin to believe it yourself. And so there are questions about how aren't women also patriarchal? Well, women aren't patriarchal, but they've internalized the patriarchy that's around them. And I think that's an important differentiation to note. The last thing I want to talk about is the boys' locker room incident that happened, and a similar incident that happened in Mumbai at the Ambani school, I believe. And I think the main issue was the sense of entitlement that comes with patriarchy. The idea that these boys could speak so aggressively and violently about a fellow classmate with such violent language really reeks of entitlement, and it reinforces the boys will be boys narrative. And in addition, if any boy who wasn't okay with it had spoken up or had spoken up against what these boys were doing, he would have been labeled, right, a wuss or gay or something else for not manning up and joining the team. And Kusha ma'am also talked about the anchors, the news anchors. And I think this is connected to the objectification, right? That there's, yes, definitely certain standards of women in media or women on screen. And it's the same reason that I think item numbers and things like that exist in Bollywood movies, because there's somewhat of a, I don't know if a demand, but I would say demand for this type of thing to be shown for particular audiences. So these are also things that are connected to patriarchy. So that's it. Thank you very much.
That was a really good, enlightening thing that you have spoken about patriarchy. I would request Ms. Santoshi Mishra to brief about the same. Santoshi ma'am, you there?
Yeah.
Ma'am, we cannot see you. Is your camera on?
Hi.
Ma'am?
Hi. Yeah. Rimma. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. So good afternoon to all of you. First of all, thank you to the college. This entire 3 months lockdown and lot of development, lot of things in mind. It was indeed, taking everyone from our platform for the students is a task. Thank you, Dr. Samanji, and the entire college and the panelists. I would
Ma'am, I think there is some connectivity issue. Ma'am, you there? I think because of some connection issue, she is has been exited. Is Hemal ma'am here? Hemal ma'am?
Hi, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
All right. First of all, thank you so much to the college, and secondly, I'm really, really glad to be sharing this stage with some extremely knowledgeable panelists. Thank you so much, guys, because I believe that was very, very informative, especially Amrita Pritam. I loved what you said. Having said that, okay, so this is regarding patriarchy in the legal culture. I am sure every one of us have been.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Prerna Sinha ma'am. Prerna Sinha ma'am. Can you please put off your camera? Prerna Sinha ma'am. Prerna Sinha ma'am, can you please put off your camera? And the mic, please. There is disturbance. Prerna ma'am, please switch off your mic. Yes, ma'am. Himal ma'am, please continue.
So, as I was just saying that I'm sure every one of us realize this for a fact that legal is obviously not behind when it comes to patriarchy altogether at the very first place. In fact, it's the only profession that deals with a lot of patriarchy, a lot of monotonous men overruling this kind of profession. So, for all the people present over here, I'd really like you to ask a question: that how many of those female Supreme Court judges do you find being elevated either from district courts or either from high courts or from any other courts down the line? The data and the statistics prove that only 3% of the women from the entire legal industry and the fraternity are only able to elevate themselves and only be able to prove themselves, which is barely 3 women in 3 damn years. That's all what we're really looking ahead at this entire set of legal profession altogether. Secondly, there are a lot of onus while we're really dealing with family laws or we're dealing with any kind of even corporate culture, which is very toxic in nature in a lot of those times. While you're dealing with something which is as basic as divorce, and then the judge very blatantly comes and asks you that, listen, if the woman also might have done something which is terribly wrong. Well, we don't say that there are no two sides of the same coin. They definitely have the two sides of the same coin. But having said that, why is the woman always supposed to be the end bearer of the same? Like Ami Patel is very, very rightly said, it's only the female divorcee who really has to go through a lot of.
तो मुझे बोल दिया हाइड कर.
I'm sorry. Uh, may I continue? All right. So, all what I was just really trying and saying is that, uh, yes, a female divorcee in the society has been very badly looked at. However, as compared to a male who's been in the society, even after committing violent crimes like domestic violence, he's not really looked down upon as so much so as female. Now, this is something which we talk about as basic family lives, and there are statistics which come and tell us that the sections of 498A and the sections of dowry, sections of child marriage, all of those things have been very widely misused. Tell me which of those sections are not being very widely misused. Dowry is a very, very serious case. It has a really put down a lot of people at the stake. The women and the lives have been really, really at the stake. So, also with regards to the corporate culture, when you go ahead with interviews, or when you really sit down and talk to directors, and am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please continue.
Awesome, thank you. All what I was just really trying to say is that now there are certain clauses which I have recently witnessed, that there are certain clauses which are being given to the female corporate lawyers stating that you will not get married for a certain period of time, or you will not really portray certain set of decisions, no matter how good or how phenomenal you perform at your entire set of corporates, which is not something which all of us should be proud about. Recently, I'm sure all of us are aware about this case of Bhavri Devi, also known as the Vishakha case versus the Union of India, wherein she was raped in the year 1992 by seven upper, upper class people, and she stood up her voice, and of course, the case reached all the way along to the Supreme Court. However, the High Court, Rajasthan High Court, turned down the decision saying that seven upper class men can never really rape a lower class woman, which is a clear cut fundamental about patriarchy all over again. So in the legal profession is obviously very, very dominant when it comes to the patriarchy altogether. The if we try picking up criminal cases, or we try picking up such narcotics cases, for example, our families are the first ones who really bar us down, saying that, listen, probably you should rethink about this. Probably this is not the right time, and you're really supposed to look after it. Probably you should only look after your family. Why not look at something simpler, merely which only has the job of going to the courts and not simply looking ahead for anything which is widely estranged. However, as compared to men, things get very easy for them, no matter how good you are presenting at what you are. So, yes, in conclusion, I'd really like to say that legal profession is no exception. The patriarchy will still exist. The laws which are being made, wherein the onus of proving whether you're right or wrong is on the female, especially when we see matters such as family law, such as divorce, such as domestic violence. It's only the woman who's supposed to come and show out the marks to the police stations, or it's only the woman who's supposed to really sit down for the FIR and say that, listen, I've been gone through something this brutal. How it's compared to the men. The men are only asked questions like, have you really done this? That's all. Even with regards to even there's a little stigma if there's a rape case which has been going in the court of the law, and just because the lawyers, and there are some men who really want to break down the character of the woman, and they ask such heinous questions which are really not right in the court of the law. Eventually, of course, things have changed a lot more better now, wherein the cases happen in camera, and it's only the female judge who's supposed to be a part of this entire such type of cases, and cases are really supposed to be in the form of speedy disposal. So there are a lot of examples day to day in our lives, wherein not only with regards to the corporate culture, but all over the entire legal fraternity stands to be pretty dominant over the same. So let's start with judiciary. Judiciary itself is very dominant. It starts with patriarchy. How many of those female judges do you see every day sitting down, passing out some judgments? So that's my take.
Thank you, Hemal ma'am. Santoshi ma'am, you're there?
Yeah, I'm there. Hi.
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
So, thank you, all of you. First of all, for the coordination to Rimma, Principal Sir, the college. It's a privilege to be part of this kind of a discussion. And a journalist cannot start any discussion on a patriarchal society without mentioning Amrita Pritam. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So Amrita Pritam, she had wrote in one of her poems, The Will of Amrita Pritam. It reads like, in my full conscious and in my good health, I'm writing today my will. After my death, ransack my room, search each item that is scattered, unlocked, everywhere in my house. Donate my dreams to all those women who, between the confines of the kitchen and the bedroom, have lost their world, have forgotten years ago what is to dream. What is to dream? Scatter my laughter, scatter my laughter among the inmates of old age homes whose children are lost to the glittering cities of America. There are some colors lying on my table. There are some colors lying on my table. With them, dye the sari of the girl whose border is edged with the blood of her man, who wrapped in the tricolor was let loose last evening. Give my tears, give my tears to all the poets. Every drop will birth a poem. I promise. I promise my honor and my reputation are for the women. I promise my honor and my reputation are for the women who prostitute her body so her daughter can get an education. Make sure you catch the youth of the country, everyone, and inject them with my indigenous. They will need it. Come, come the revolution my captive belongs to, that Sufi who abandoning everything has set off in search of God. Finally, finally, what is left? My envy, my grief, my anger, my lies, my selfishness, we simply cremate with them. So my intention was to start this with Amrita Pritam. Much ahead than time, much ahead than time, she had written this poem. So patriarchal society and women would have been, I suppose, fighting for long, and people have come out and spoken on various diets by various men. Being a crime journalist, I would like to bring several things uh, because 20 years is a long journey where you see things happening all around. Like people would talk about women when we go about
Ma'am, you there? Santoshi, ma'am, you're there? Ma'am? Okay, I think again there has been some connectivity issue from her side. It was a very lovely poem that was recited by ma'am, but it's really sad that it was written with such a sorrow. I would request Ami ma'am to start with a discussion stating that how, or what kind of perception do this society have when somebody like what Santoshi ma'am mentioned writes down or points down a poem like this? What is the thought process that goes on?
What is the thought process that goes on when someone is writing a poem such as this?
Yeah, while writing a poem, as well as if somebody is reading it from the other side. So what are the both the perspective, like what she is going through, and when somebody is reading it, what would be the thought process that would be there?
Okay, so I can't speak to the person writing it, but I would say the interpretation is, and I would imagine that her thought process is coming from a point of really creating a space for women, right? She's talking about give my tears to this space, or give. I guess what I'm trying to articulate is that she's really highlighting all the different ways that patriarchy manifests itself in both overt ways and subtle ways. And I feel that, you know, we can all talk about patriarchy in very overt ways. There's a clear dichotomies, as Hemel ma'am said, in the legal field, or as Kusha ma'am said, in the field of journalism and sports. And I think that we can all agree that those things are wrong. But I think that what this poem highlights is all the subtle ways that patriarchy really is pervasive in our lives. And those are the ways that sometimes we don't even realize, but we feel them deeply, or we observe them, but we can't always connect it to the threads of patriarchy. We know that something doesn't feel right, or something doesn't seem appropriate, but if we sort of pull the thread back long enough, we can connect it to the origins of this idea that somehow women are in their bodies, in their thoughts, in their capabilities, not as good or as strong as men. And I feel like that the poem really, in a very sorrowful way, articulated that.
Okay. Putting some more point on that, I would request Kusha ma'am to can we discuss on how exactly and since when this patriarchy thing exists in our country, and what type of evolution it has seen till date?
I didn't get the question. Can you repeat it, please?
Ma'am, like if we see till date the history, I'm talking about the past, like what is the evolution that we have seen when it comes to patriarchy? Like what changes have we seen from since when it is exist, and what are the future changes possibly we can see that will happen?
Okay. See, patriarchy has existed for thousands of years, and many like I remember that I met Kamla Bhasin once, and she had actually given the history of patriarchy to us, and she said patriarchy began with the idea of ownership, owning land, owning women, and having an heir, an heir whom you can pass your inheritance to. So patriarchy has existed for thousands of years. It has evolved to become more and more oppressive, more and more oppressive and violent in various parts of the world. Of course, there are other alternative societies that have also existed. There have been matrilineal societies, there are matriarchal societies, but patriarchal societies have been the dominant societies all over the world. And as I said, it has evolved, and it has added on restrictions after restrictions, violent restrictions, oppression against women, and patriarchal notions have also in a way created ideas like transphobia or homophobia for a very long time in Western societies specifically. It all began in Western societies, the entire idea of transphobia and homophobia. So patriarchy has diverged into various it has various legs, and it has taken over an entire world, and it has dominated the thought process. And that's why, since 18th century or 19th century in the Western world, we have seen we have seen patriarchal notions getting challenged from by women. And in India, it started in the 19th century. We have seen different waves of feminism. We are right now in the fourth wave of feminism. These three or four waves of feminism have contributed towards unsettling patriarchal discourses and patriarchal ideologies to a great extent. But we are still in between. We are still passing through it. We are still not over with it. We are fighting very hard to get gender justice. We are fighting very hard for equality. And when we talk about India, we talk about Indian context, the battle is far from being won. We are still fighting to stop female feticide. We are still fighting to stop dowry deaths. We are still fighting to stop child marriages in states like Rajasthan. So patriarchy, as I said, has evolved to become more and more oppressive over the millennia or over centuries. But still, the resistance has also grown leaps and bounds, and there have been fruits of resistance that we have seen. As I think Avni mentioned, she talked about Me Too movement. Me Too movement in the present context, a very latest example, is a symbol of how how women, when they come together, they actually become a force to reckon with, and they fight with they fight against patriarchal dominance. Even in an industry like Hollywood, we really get to see how far patriarchy has its stronghold or strong foothold in these industries, which are considered to be very open and very accommodating when it comes to gender equality. Though I'm not going to talk about pay equality, there is no pay equality, no pay parity, but yes, it has actually unsettled. Me Too is one movement. There are other movements that have unsettled the stronghold of patriarchy and is unsettling it in many societies and ways. Thank you.
True, that is true. Santoshi ma'am, you're there?
Hello,
Santoshi
hi.
ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear us? Santoshi ma'am? Okay, Hemal ma'am, you're there?
Yeah. Hi. Hi, Kinjal.
Yeah. So, Hemal ma'am, for keeping our point further to what Kusha ma'am said, from a legal perspective, what kind of evolution it has? Like we know mostly our laws are from British Raj. So when we talk about a law pertaining to patriarchy or law pertaining to various other social issues which are subsided under patriarchy, like we have marital rape, we have various other things. So what are the legal aspects that we have seen in our constitution?
Firstly, thank you, Usha ma'am. You very beautifully explained how things go ahead and how the entire evolution of patriarchy has all over began. So, with regards to your question, Kinjal, I believe the laws are not evaluating or not really evolving in the speed and the manner that they should be, as compared to as compared to the situation that surrounds us. But nevertheless, the things are going fine. The Supreme Court last year struck down adultery in its full form, which allowed women to be with their set of partners, which they really wish to be, and that I think was really taken up positively by a lot of people, which was really also tamed as a masterstroke by the Supreme Court. Also, with regards to dowry deaths, also with regards to female feticide, also with regards to various other family laws, not much of evaluation has been seen altogether, because the Like Kushama has very, very rightly said, it all starts with ownership. True. Very, very true. It has really been penned down in the law books. It has also been penned down by infamously legal authors that women are property. Okay, in olden days, there was a myth that a man is supposed to look after the family, and he's supposed to hunt for the food and then just come back and give it to the woman and the child. And because the woman and the child were considered sensitive, he was supposed to be protected to them. But this norm, as long as it just stays along, has been going along. So as compared to the comparison now, I do not really find much of things evolving in favor of women, because if it did, then we did not even really had movements at the first place.
Okay. Also, do you feel that in future there are chances that certain law might be implemented or amended in such respect?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are a lot of petitions which are pending in the Supreme Court. There are a lot of addendums which have been supposed to be taken back into this consideration with the Supreme Court. And I'm very positive about the given fact that there are going to be more female-centric laws to be taken into consideration, if not female-centric, at least at par with what the gender equality or gender neutrality should come or take place. Because the judges eventually come from Indian society as well. Judiciary comes from Indian society. It has its roots in Indian society. So I do not say there's going to be a complete disparity with regards to the same. But coming at par with regards to law is something which we are really, really looking forward to.
Okay. Santoshi ma'am, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ma'am, so from a journalism perspective, if we discuss about patriarchy, what role media has played by far, like till date, what are the eminent journalists or reporters who have worked in this field, and what was the outcome for the same? Can you please put some highlights on that?
See, as I was trying to connect in the initial things, this patriarchy is there from when the man and the woman was born. We are talking about it. When we talk about the professionalism, when we travel, we come with the same mindset. We are having the same mindset. Despite that all, there are uh, remarkable work done by women journalists. I mean, we have to, since we are talking about patriarchal society, I have to mention like a women journalist, but in journalism, there is nothing called men and women. When you go for a job, you're not identified the same work what a man, your colleague will do. I would say that same work you are going to do. So there is lot of development. There is a lot of change. Like you see, when we are talking about unfortunate conditions, we are talking about blast. And several times this thing happened that Mumbai has witnessed all this kind of situation several times. You don't find women. I'm talking about the print media, which data the panelist she shared that you see the 5%, because that 5%, although that percent is 5, I definitely agree that the percentile that way is very low. But it really requires lot of courage, lot of determination. You're working odd hours, you know time you are leaving, you don't know what time you're going to come. You are traveling by you are traveling by buses, you are using all local transportations, plus you have your own vehicle, you cannot take, you have a competition. Recently she was talking about every pandemic, we see the anchor in the hills and all that. Do you feel that? I mean, I'm a part of a system, and luckily from print media, I would say. Do you feel that all of them they enjoy this? Definitely, they don't enjoy. If you want to see a TV, would you like to see a anchor who is wearing a sari and she is in a, her hairs are out and she is not well dressed or something? You would not like to see it. there has been a parameter set. Because there has been parameter set, so we start seeing there is an experiment to it. We start seeing that, isse niche people don't want anything. But when I say all these things, we have witnessed good journalists. There is a good journalism. And good journalism, when we talk about good journalism, has taken place only, I would stress that only word, not because I'm a woman or I would like to, it's about a patriarchal society, is it taken place by women? Because they do everything. Like one of the incidents I want to mention, people believe a lot of when people go for lodging a complaint or something. Especially this is trend is you will see that when there's an International Women Day, the police station you start finding that suddenly the women is from constabulary to senior. I'm not talking about IPS rank, but I'm talking about the police station wise. You start seeing the police officials as a women. So have a confidence. Women are originally inbuilt, have a good understanding, in-depth knowledge. They do proper analysis. They really don't know something. They like to admit, I do not know. Would you please explain? They don't go on a lab kind of a thing. Yes, when we see in the last 5 years, when we look at the TV media, electronic media, especially, we see that even, I don't want to, we see the trend. There is a trend that women are seen on the field. Glamour anchorism has come. But that glamour anchorism has come because it is emphasized on them. See, when you come out for a job, as a journalist, you want to retain it. If you are in job, then only you can show what is happening. If you are not in a job, you cannot show what is happening. This patriarchal society, or for that matter, any women-oriented, this is not possible unless she is there. She needs to be there. So she tries to be there. I am not at all justifying. I would not like to do, or I don't entertain this kind of a journalism. Yes, there have been good journalists, female journalists. We have in Mumbai City has witnessed journalists like Rajwanti D'Souza. Mumbai City has witnessed journalists like Anati Mehra, who have dedicated completely into 1990 plus. We talk about legal, they have gone to legal. You don't see men coming to court cases reporting, they do come. The profile is again that way. They do come, but then they don't have understanding. There you cannot show your body texture or some sort of a body realistic things, and you cannot see. You have seen the city or overall Mumbai has or country has seen that there are good journalists and they have good heart, and they have shown that way that if they are in reporting, they have justified the job. It's not about justification. So I feel that there is being change. Like you see that now editors on a tabloids having women journalists who have come from grassroots level. They have come. You can see Kavita here in Indian Express. She's an associate. She has come from ground. She has reported. You can see many people from that. You can see Sunil Baghel. She leads Mumbai Mirror. You can see many journalists, women journalists who have worked on a grassroots level and they have walked lines. So yes, there is definitely a difference is created in media. But as I say that management, I would like to add on this. So then there is a twist. Management is definitely not run by. There is no say of the women. Like Hindu was when run by management was having involvement of women, family women members. So things were different. When Malti Iyer was there, things were different. So the management is basically patriarchal, which is the same thing. They want things on their end, and they don't care about things like how a journalist is going, how things are there. So basically, it's all about management needs to change. Like there are changes. Women are coming up with small portals. They're coming up. They're writing on it. Bloggers. So there is a change. I think that like this the patriarchy system is not like one fine day everyone has said, okay, now from November I'm going to read this. No, no, the chapter was not introduced this way. So the system will not go like in one stance. It will take its own time, and everyone is trying. In fact, everyone from own the marketing team, advertising team, even in media, everyone is trying to make a difference. We have started talking about gender equality. We are talking about Vishakha community. We started raising head, which is really very important. You just imagine there was nothing like, raising head. Now, because of Me Too or whatever it is happening, people have started coming out and speaking. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
So I am really feeling that difference we are talking about in the society. It is not just based on the media, salaries, or all across in the legal fraternity, in anywhere. All about inculcating all those things when you're born, when nurturing is done. Then the gender equality comes to talk about, then raise your head. Media is definitely changed. Media is changing. Like you have seen that Me Too movement has just started. I have encountered so many female journalists who had no, they were not there to take the revenge of it. They wanted to clear the air. That's so much within them. They wanted to clear. So slowly, the system has started changing. I would, I would add that, and it is a slow process because when I'm talking about it, so you see that women are there on the grassroots. They need to be entrepreneurs. They need to be in the management. They need to, when they're just included in the management, it's not just going to be just that they're there in the management for the sake of that 30% reservation. But if they're there in the management, for sure, it needs to be assured that their opinion counts. What they are saying, for they want to make a change, that is counted. So then there will be a change. I hope I tried answering you things in a little wider perspective because I have worked in media, so I just try to reconnect so many aspects to you.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, you did.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so we heard Kusha ma'am saying, we heard Hemal ma'am saying about how oppressive and overpowering the patriarchy has been in our society. So, if we were supposed to bring in the change, or if we were supposed to bring in the awareness in the society that how this oppressive doesn't work, like we need to work on our thought process. So, Ami ma'am, my question to you is, how can one bring awareness in the society? Because when one tries to bring the awareness, or when one tries to talk about it, so the general statement that we get is, अरे ये तो feminist type की है, या ये तो feminism को लेकर अभी start हो जाएगी. So
Yeah.
not coming to that statement, how can we subtly bring about the change and the awareness in the mindset of people?
Thank you. That's a great question. So I think that change has to happen on multiple levels, right? It has to happen on the macro level. Like Santoshi ma'am said, it's about getting a place at the table, whether it's in policy making, legislation writing, or management place at the table, so that we can be part of the decision making. We can be part of creating that awareness and creating that change and advocating for ourselves and our fellow women, female professionals, or just women in general, right? We have to have a seat at the table first. So that's one thing on the macro level. And then on the micro level, I just wanted to make a comment that's connected to this, that Hemal ma'am said that this all started with property, right? Land, women, etc. So I think that's what happens. Like, as long as that mentality, even on a core level or a subconscious level exists, that a woman once married or once off to another family is their property or their responsibility, it allows for these patriarchal sort of notions to perpetuate. So that's, I think, how marital rape happens, right? That many partners perceive their wives to be their property, for which they can do with whatever they would like, regardless of pleasure, regardless of pain, regardless of choice. They engage in this kind of behavior. And I think while maybe, as you said, ma'am, that patriarchy started out as a sort of a distribution of labor where men were out gathering and women were in the home nurturing and taking care. What happens is, because patriarchy allows for power and control, that power and control eventually gets abused. And when that abuse of power happens, that's when we see patriarchy, the trajectory of patriarchy increasing. So I think when we talk about change, like I said, it has to happen at a macro level, but it also has to happen at a micro level. Remember, things like sexism and prejudice and gender stereotypes, these are all learned behaviors. No one is born feeling like, I'm a man, so I can do this, or I'm a woman, so I have to do this. Everything is learned. Everything is taught through observation, through explicit language, through modeling of behavior of parents and extended family members, of community, of society. So what we have to do on the micro level is unlearn that ourselves. We have to question, I think this way. Why do I think this way? We have to challenge our own thinking. We have to understand, where is this thinking coming from? Where were the seeds of this type of mentality planted? And we have to challenge those things. So we can do it with our friends. We can do it with our family members. The next time, I think it's all about awareness, right? So I think it's important for all the students that are out there to think about, how are they seeing patriarchy in its very pervasive forms or very overt forms manifesting in front of them, and then calling it out, observing it, challenging it, and talking to people about it. And I think that if you begin to have these conversations, if you begin to raise awareness, not because, I'm taking my feminist flag and running with it, but rather, how does this work for all of us? Because really, studies show that the more women are included in things like policy making, legislative decisions, management decisions, the community and the society grows and progresses forward. So it's not about feminism, it's not about that. It's about, how do we grow as a community? How do we bring these communities and the people forward? And it comes down to our individual thoughts, our individual behaviors. We really do have to take a civic responsibility, I think, right? To think about what role do I play in either perpetuating these ideas, or what role can I play in stopping, challenging, and questioning these ideas, and how do I create a conversation and a dialogue? This is not about me ramming my feminist agenda down somebody's throat, right? This is about creating discussion and conversation and engaging minds so that we can really challenge our own ingrained patriarchy and our own ingrained socialized behavior expectations to begin to make changes.
Very rightly said. So, Hemal ma'am, when we talk about sexism and when we talk about patriarchy, how different are these terminologies from a legal aspects or legal point of view? Hemal ma'am, can you hear me?
We talk about, right. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I can now. Hello? Hemal ma'am?
Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible now.
Regarding the same, But please let me know as soon as you're unable to listen to what I'm just saying.
No problem, ma'am. Did you get my question?
Yes, 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 please. May I proceed?
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
So yeah, so as I was saying, there's let me just say
Ma'am, I think there is a glitch from your side. Hemal, ma'am.
as
Hemal, ma'am. I think there is some glitch, network glitch. Okay. Till the network gets fixed, there's this one question that one of the participant has asked. So, Kusha ma'am, would you like to answer? The question is that how open is our society and media to accept that women could be in overpower of a patriarchy? Like example, women abusing men either at workplace, in family or films, as there being in instances or reported.
Yeah, to accept women in power. Okay. As far as, see, again, the question, uh, actually is around an issue which cannot have one answer, because as I understand, it seems to be talking about women in power, women in top position, and when they are in top position, they are overcoming patriarchy, and at workplace they are abusing men either at workplace, family, on films. See, you know this may be true for urban centers, okay, but there are various realities at various levels. There are varied realities at various levels of patriarchal oppression of women. So it may be true in urban centers where women have been able to navigate, to make a place for themselves at the workplace, and yeah, at the workplace, and it gets represented in media as well as in films also. So the society is opening up. For example, the success of films like Lipstick Under My Burqa is very much an indication of the opening up of society, and people accepting women abusing on screen, or women smoking on screen, or women having multiple partners, or older women having orgasm. So of course things are changing, things are becoming better, but only in some sections. It cannot be it's not a uniform phenomenon. So there is a large section of society in India as well as elsewhere in the world where women still are going through lot of oppression due to patriarchal system. But yes, in some advanced societies and advanced sections of society, definitely they have overcome. Society is accepting. As far as men accepting women as their bosses, that is also a very new, it is at a very nascent stage at the moment. Men are not so, I mean, patriarchal system is not so comfortable with women, in top positions, or women in leadership positions, and dictating their terms. It is changing. It is very gradually changing, but it's not a very widespread phenomenon. Yes, which actually is an indication that still our society is not very comfortable with women, with women or with women assuming dominant positions in workplace or in family or in films. As I said, in my last answer, that, patriarchy has evolved to become more oppressive, and oppressive in very, very subtle forms. So, educated women who are working, who may actually be holding very high positions in workplace, still when they are in their homes, they are made to realize that they're not boss at home. They may be boss in the company, but they're not the boss at home. So it is working in very, very subtle ways now, nowadays, in the present times. But patriarchal oppression and challenges and notions are still governing a major, is still driving the major discourses of our society. And that's why, breaking the glass ceiling in itself is very difficult for women even now. And even if when they're able to do, they're called bitches in offices. Men who are working under them, they actually call them the bitches. It becomes very difficult to take orders from women bosses, though things are changing in some corporate houses. But the patriarchal system is still working in very, very subtle ways, because for example, if there is generally, it is assumed if a woman is married and have children, she would not be able to progress to the top of the company, and because she has other obligations which pull her down. And even if when a woman reaches the top, and if she's unmarried, then there are other kinds of assumptions around her, that she's available to take care of a lot of things because she doesn't have a family to take care of. There's so many assumptions that work even in the modern corporate culture, and these are very, very subtle. Some of these issues don't come out. Some of them definitely are out there in the open to debate upon. But yes, gradually, very slowly, things are changing. But then the stronghold of patriarchal notions is such that it's still affecting, and it's maybe affecting more in more subtle ways. So I hope that answers the question.
I'm sure the participant has got the answer to the question. Santoshi ma'am, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah.
Okay. So as Kusha ma'am said, that we have movies like Lipstick Under My Burqa who are successful in a way. But when we see in media, when commercial films or a big banner films come, there is so much of hype, and there is so much of talk in the town. But when it comes to a woman-centric film, or when it comes to a film or any particular initiative that has taken place, so how open is the media house on reporting such initiatives, or reporting such films, or talking about such films?
See, I'll tell you one thing, that people need to understand that entertainment is a totally separate segment altogether. Entertainment industry is a total separate segment because of it. Because see, people in society, they don't know. They count that legal reporter or a health journalist knows everything about entertainment and should know everything about entertainment. So that's a different segment. It's about the production houses when their movies are ready. I'm just giving the background so that, see, these are all students. They should know that you cannot just come and say that everyone is responsible for goods and bads. So when production houses approach, so they talk about their PR team, they come up with that. So entertainment segment actually prepares the chart, and they are there for that, this kind of the film, especially like, you talk about the two movies. I suppose our panelists have mentioned two movies. I would more of the time, that is, first we talked about Thappad. See that Thappad movie, if you compare that Thappad movie, was given a wide range of publicity by media. Even Lipstick Under Burqa got wide publicity in media.
Ma'am, you there?
किधर मैं बाहर जाके आई
Ma'am?
पूरा बाहर जाके आई मैं खुद भी भूल गई
Participant, please
Muskan,
switch
please.
off your mic.
Muskan, please switch off your mic. Muskan Singh. Muskan Singh, kindly switch off your mic.
Participant Muskan Singh.
मुझे भेजी लगता है मेरे हाथ से उठेगा इतना हद
Muskan Singh, can you hear us?
कर लिया आप लोग
Hello, Kinjal ma'am, please continue.
Yes, ma'am. Santoshi ma'am, you're there? I think we have lost the connection with her. Okay, Hemal ma'am, you're there? Hemal ma'am?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you now.
Awesome.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you now. Yes, ma'am. So, yes, coming back to the question that was raised, which is how to define patriarchy and sexism differently, or how similar they are from a legal point of view, or how different they are from a legal point of view.
Kinjal, as I have said earlier, that there is basically a very thin line of difference between them. Kinjal, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Awesome. So I was saying that patriarchy is something which has been going along for years, and it has been imbibed in the form of habit. Sexism is a choice which we make. I will give you a very simple example of sexism versus patriarchy. It's a very common example in the court of law, stating that only the men are supposed to be the judges. It's a common norm. However, I don't state that. It's because they have been termed as very stable, or they have been termed as very able-minded to take the decisions as compared to females. As compared to sexism, there are certain law firms which say that, listen, our females or our litigating lawyers will only wear such type of clothes, and either wear only this type of clothes, and it is only after 6 p.m. certain females will pick up the phone calls on the reception, or therefore certain meetings, it's only the females who are supposed to go for such kind of things. So along with the sexism, there's enough of exploitation that goes along to women. So patriarchy and sexism, although deeply rooted, but difference in choices.
Okay, there's one question by a participant, Aishwarya Gurav. The question is that what is your take on female misusing the law to protect them, as there are many instances reported of misusal of laws that safeguards women rights or protects them. So what is the same?
Honestly, I don't, I'm sorry, may I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Honestly, I don't really think there's any law which is not exploited by any gender. Female doing this as a part is obviously a crime. However, it has been very highly derogated by the courts. In my personal opinion, I believe there has to be. I understand there are false cases filed every year regarding misusing of laws regarding the females, but I also believe that there has to be some strict investigation to come along the given part, because there are certain chances, certain circumstantial evidences wherein the female might be very right about it, but she might be portrayed as wrong in front of the court of the law by the lawyers and a stringent set of questions, which is highly unfair. Like recently, there was a case which was passed by Bombay High Court stating that woman has filed an extreme wrong rape case, but she was really raped after the forensic labs showed out some set of reports, and after forensic lab proved it that she had some instances, or she had certain conditions which proved it in such a manner. So my entire set of saying is that is wrong. That is absolutely 100% wrong. But certain circumstances, of course, in the legal Indian judiciary system, things gets very tough, especially when the onus lies on the women.
Okay, there is one more question by the participant, Jui Gogri. The question is that is there any categorization in the eye of law that rapist is stranger or acquaintance?
Uh, that's a very interesting question. However, there is no basic categorization of whether a rapist can be a stranger or anything of that sort. A rapist, it can be anyone. Even I think I don't really think there's any such kind of categorization, and having such kind of categorization would itself be very unfair to the entire set of laws which have been promulgated by the Indian Constitution.
Okay. Okay. So, coming back to the understanding aspect, there are certain questions that are being raised. Like when we see that there are advertisements and films that talk about, there is so much change in the society. Like we spoke about Thappad movie, and when we see films like Mardani, that there is a lot of changes that we see on the media side or the entertainment section. But still, when it comes to progress, or when it comes to having some authority, not much consideration is given to the female gender. So, Ami ma'am, what is your take on the same? Ami ma'am, you're there?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I said, can you just clarify, what do you mean by authority? I mean, do you mean consideration given in what specific aspect? Culturally, socially, legally?
Culturally.
So I think that, I think that, as one of my fellow panelists had said in their previous statements, that I think that there is a desire to sort of break free from the patriarchy, right? What we couldn't do some decades back, we're doing now, which is talking about it so openly and challenging the constructs of patriarchy. And so therefore, I think what's happening is we're seeing that unfold culturally as well. So we see it in terms of maybe like for in family systems, we're seeing it as maybe there's more of an awareness, whereas before the sons of the family could be out late at night with the friends, the girls the daughters could not be as late, or that, you know, maybe female children were not as encouraged to pursue higher education, whereas now there's an understanding that that it is just as important. However, I think there are some cultural constructs that are still pervasive. I've observed that even in the most progressive of families, as Kusha ma'am has said, that there's such subtle aspects of patriarchy that still remain and that are really difficult to get to unless you really scratch the surface. You know, I have clients that, you know, the daughter is encouraged to get education, whether it's a bachelor's degree or a master's degree even, but with the full understanding that she will not continue that profession, but rather it will make her a more desirable candidate when searching for partners, right? So there is a real dichotomy, I think, in the way that people perceive themselves to be more progressive and understanding of these constructs, but when it actually comes to this sort of micro level, direct day-to-day living, there seems to be a difficulty in really putting things into play. Really enforcing some of these changes or implementing these changes into the day-to-day life. So I think that's part of it. And then I think culturally also, yes, we're seeing that whether it's reflective in social media, whether it's reflective in entertainment or in other aspects, we are seeing the growth of the roles for women expanding. Like you mentioned Mardani, for example, where the character was sort of seen as this kick-ass, you know, no holds barred inspector who went after the traffickers and things like that. But also, I think what we need to understand is women in power, as Kushiman spoke in terms of women ascending to power in management or in the corporate world. You know, it's almost expected that she has to then begin acting like a man. You know, that she has to be really aggressive, or she has to be really outspoken, or take certain steps. And I think that's a bit of a myth in terms of when we talk about challenging the patriarchy. I think women can be how they are and still assert themselves and still grow. I don't think we have to show such either a demonization or such an aggressive sort of portraiture of women as they're beginning to challenge patriarchy in our cultural context. Does that answer the question in some way?
Yes, ma'am. Also, the word itself is Mardani. So somewhere, even though if you want to prove yourself to be
you have to be like a man, right? You have to be manly.
Men-like.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
men-like. So that's what the major thing that we need to change. Also, there's one question from a participant, that can women be ever freed from the chains of superficial assumptions, false goodwill, and preconceived notions and beliefs? Can they ever truly be free from all these things?
Shall I answer that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That's a good question. I think that we can't actually expect the responsibility of that to fall on women, because we have to understand that patriarchy at the core is about a certain level of oppression, right? So actually the oppressor or the oppressing party has to play a role in the de-oppression of the other party, if that makes sense. That actually it's not, yes, women can continue to assert themselves and continue to ask for or advocate for a place at the table, continue to advocate for themselves in the home and in their personal lives. But I think until the oppressing party, until men begin to be collaborators in this process of eradicating patriarchy, or at least dismantling patriarchy, it's very difficult, I think, to see sustainable changes, right? The oppressor has to understand that they're being oppressive. The oppressor has to accept that they are being oppressive. And in doing so, and in accepting and understanding the role that they play, they can begin the dismantling process, right? So there has to be a meeting in this process. It has to be a mutual process. It can't just be the women that can sort of make this go away or dismantle it completely.
Okay, so there's one question from my side. that
Yes.
usually we have this sex expert column in Mumbai Mirror newspaper where the question
Uh-huh.
related to masturbation and all is asked. But the thing
Yeah.
is, where something like masturbation is stigmatized for a man itself, how is
Mm.
society going to perceive if said that women masturbates? Because there was this one
Mhm.
scene in the movie Viredi Wedding where one of the actor was caught
Mhm.
masturbating by the husband and
Mhm.
ultimately leads to a divorce. So
Right.
when things like this happen, like how
Hmm.
long is it going for our Indian society to change their perception on same, and how do we
Mhm.
destigmatize masturbation as a term itself?
Okay, so it's a bit of a complicated thing. I think that first of all, I think there has to be an acceptance. See, I think for so long in our culture, there's the idea of sex, of anything related to sex, sexual identity, sexual pleasure, has been long considered taboo, has been considered something that you don't speak of, that it's something to keep behind closed doors. It's not something that's discussed publicly or taken ownership of. And I think the first thing that has to happen is there has to be a normalization of one's sexual identity. There has to be a normalization and acceptance of the fact that men and women are sexual beings and that there's nothing wrong with that doesn't reflect poorly on their character or on their upbringing, but it's just a matter of fact. And so I think once we can do that, once we can accept that there is nothing wrong or harmful about owning one's own sexuality and one's own sexual identity, then one can be free of sort of the stigma of engaging in either self-stimulation through masturbation or even sexual intercourse with consenting partners. So I think that's the first step of it. And I think that part of it also comes from there's sort of fetishization or sexualization of women's bodies. As someone had asked this question about why is it considered gross when women breastfeed in public? Because I think that women's bodies have been sexualized, but in an oppressive way or through the male gaze, instead of being seen as what they are, which is individual entities with a right to pleasure, with a right to have these own aspects of their identity. So not only is masturbation okay and healthy, but male masturbation is okay, as is female masturbation. And I think, again, when we talk about smashing patriarchy or raising feminism in aspects of media, there's always this sort of extreme depiction, like this character in Vida the Wedding, where she was a masturbating monster and she couldn't stop masturbating. There's a real sort of exaggeration or characterization of these things. And I think what we need to do is create some sort of moderate understanding of what these things are and how they are naturally occurring in life and in society and in culture. And I think that, again, this is connected to things like marital rape or pornography even. I think, there's such a huge surge in consumption of pornography in this country. And that is also, so much of pornography is rooted in patriarchy and misogyny and outright violence and aggression. And so there's really this, at least from a psychological perspective, what I see is that, it's really skewing people's understanding of what intimacy or physical intimacy is and can be in a consensual relationship. It's creating a lot of difficulty for people in terms of their expectations of their partners, their expectations of themselves, and it really creates a certain level of insecurity, and then that gets compensated by an over aggression that we see that manifests itself in relationships. Does that?
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
It was really good to hear from you. Okay, now my question to Kusha ma'am. Kusha ma'am, you're there?
Yes, yes,
Kusha
I'm
ma'am.
there. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. As Ami ma'am said rightly that pornography and objectifying of women is lot in our society. What would be your take on ads that advertisements that particularly objectify women, especially deodorant ads, where it's shown that a guy wears a deodorant and women are just ready to pounce on him? So, what is your take on the same? Like, how can we, you know, change this perspective, or how it is impacting in our society, the conception or the notions via such advertisements?
See, absolutely, specifically these advertisements, these advertisements in which, the men, they are they're putting on DO, and just to attract women or to attract girls, and that definitely is affecting the young generation. uh, you know uh, and not just these deodorant ads, but there are other kinds of there are other kinds of sexualized representation of women in films and in media, that definitely is in a very, very negative way. It is affecting it is affecting the young minds and the young generation. uh, there, in order to deal with that, in order to tackle this kind of commodified objectifying representation of women, I think media has to be held accountable. There has to be accountability. There has to be there has to be a systemic campaign against such sexualized representations. And there has to be there has to be widespread debates around what exactly what exactly what exactly is to be shown, or what is exactly being shown. It is being shown in order to titillate, in order to sell more, in order to appeal to the hormones raging in these young boys, adolescent boys, who basically would buy that deodorant because it would attract the girl in their schools or in their neighborhood. So definitely, as Avni has just said, that there has to be a collective understanding, to see how these images or these representations are negatively impacting the young generation. And these can also be tackled basically at the level of the family, because the institution of family is basically the basic unit. It's the basic unit, and it is most patriarchal even today, in today's time. So the men or the women in the family, they really have to understand the kind of value system they need to give, or they need to imbibe, or they need to propagate within their families. And those value systems definitely are going to help in countering the impact of this overflow of sexualized representation on television, on new media, or pornography, as Avni very rightly talks about. There's such high consumption of pornography in the country. It has to be regulated somewhere, both at the legal level, at the social level, at the family level. All these institutions have to work together in order to counter the impact of this over dosage or overflow of such misrepresentations that actually create scenarios of violence. For example, if we all remember the December 2012 rape case, the kind of barbarity that was inflicted on that girl in Delhi, that medical student in Delhi. And I remember reading in the newspapers that these boys had actually they were watching porn. Before that, they were drinking and they were watching porn. So it actually shows a direct connection, how these representations of these representations of the body on media platforms, or which is available on the internet through pornography or porn films. actually are impacting or creating more scenarios of gruesome violence in society. So of course they need to be regulated, and there are again, I would say, some changes happening, because I remember seeing this very nice a very nice video when it says, लड़के रोते हैं पर रुलाते नहीं, लड़के रुलाते नहीं. So there is a lot, there are some changes happening even in the virtual medium, even in the media representations, but then there has to be more of it. There has to be more of it, and there has to be a complete ban on such misrepresentations of gender identity, or sexual or sexualized representation, or objectifying women on television and in ads.
Yes, ma'am. Ami ma'am would like to spot on some light on the same.
Yeah, I think that Krishna ma'am spoke so eloquently about the DO ads and the impact. And I just want to tie it into what I had said before when I was talking about patriarchy, that the other side of patriarchy is about how it negatively affects men, right? It creates these expectations of this toxic type of masculinity. And I think that's directly connected to these deodorant ads, right? Where it really hypes up the image of what a man should look like, what it should be. And it really emphasizes that he's supposed to be built and strong and good looking, and that somehow is reflective of his sexual prowess and his ability to get women and to engage in these types of sexual relationships, and it just further enhances the masculinity. So I think that they really do a disservice to men, because I think what we need to ask ourselves is why, we have these boxes culturally about the genders, right? So if you're a man, you have to fit into this box. And if you're a woman, you have to fit into this box. And when a woman displays characteristics that are normally reserved for men, or when a man displays characteristics that are normally reserved for women, people are very uncomfortable with that. And so then they have to find a way to put it down. They have to find a way to question it or demonize it. And I think that's where we have to start. Why does a man have to have a six-pack and be built, and gym memberships are through the roof? I think a lot of these things are really connected. The pornography use that we talked about, like, it's all connected. We don't have to look a certain way or be a certain way. And I think that's where we have to sort of break free from, because I think that's what's these thoughts and these false ideals are perpetuating this type of difficulty for both genders, for all genders. And I think that's something that we need to sort of understand. So thank you for the opportunity.
Santoshi ma'am, you're there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
Ma'am, there are a few questions related to like certain stigmatization, like why breastfeeding, which is something very natural, is considered to be gross, and also talking about rape drug that has been given to women usually when with their friends and stuff. So as a journalistic point of view, what is your take on the same?
See, it's all about mindset. When we are talking about breastfeeding, it's all about mindset. In the year 2018, there was a summit, National Mandela Peace Summit was there. And I think so, Jacinda Ardern, she was there, and she, during the summit, she has done the breastfeeding for her child. Even in 2019, Larissa, there was in the Senate, there was a bill to be passed, and Larissa Waters, she had done the breastfeeding. See, if you look at the larger part of it, there is a study which was being done by Harvard's journal, which says that 80% are in our country, 80%, like let's hold. See, imagine why I'm telling you two examples. In the country which we call as a European country, they have to also come out and show, symbolize that breastfeeding is a natural process. It's not just you will say that Asian only, one can say that it's about Asian countries. And when we talk about Asian countries, we specifically are talking about India. Breastfeeding is a taboo which is seen all across. That's the reason Larissa Waters, she had shown an example, and that's the reason Jacinda, she had done that thing. And now, when the research came about country, it was revealed that 80% are having hitch in terms of breastfeeding, which is very natural. Actually, for that, we need to understand one of the thing. I'll be taking you one of the very examples. Breastfeeding is actually, because I'm also a mother, and women is lucky. Whenever she's talking, she has her own example. Breastfeeding is a mental med process. You can term it as a meditation. A mother and a child bondage, which is solely a very private affair. Whenever mother is feeding a child, there has been a complete peace on her face, a satisfaction on her face to deliver the desire of the bachu. With that, she sees that the child is hungry, and the hunger of the child is also happy. The child is also happy. So, see, breastfeeding will definitely, I don't think so, it should be taken as a taboo. It is definitely a private, a very private affair. So maybe that may be the meditation, since the process is of all about meditation, a bondage between a mother and the child. So that may be the reason that it is not evident so much. That's one of the things you asked. And so it would be, I don't think so, that well evident. But if you look at the rural areas of our country, so you find that it is very normal. The child comes, the even the infants, the children who are crawling, they go to their grandmothers, and they grandmothers also do the breastfeeding. So it's a total different a study subject, which involves a complete togetherness, a bondage, a linkage. So I am personally feeling that I mean that's still a subject to be reviewed and studied, and that's one thing. Second, you were talking about I missed the question. Was it about the rape and drugs?
Yes,
Angel?
rape drug that is given.
What is exactly the question of the student is that it's not reportage, or what is exactly? Would you
Yeah,
please
how
tell
how
me?
it is reported and what kind of awareness that needs to be brought in teenagers when it comes to going out with friends, and how precautionate they have to be when consuming something given by the friend or a stranger, because usually when we see, when it comes to rape drug, it is given either by a stranger or a friend in a drink or in a food. So what kind of reporting in India is done for the same matter, and what kind of awareness do girls need to have for the same?
So see, I'll come first of all. It's 98% is the rape, which NCRB data reveals that that 98% rape. It's in all across rape is by the acquaintance. Anyone, you include your close relatives, that is, or your outer circle relative, or your friends, your outer circle friends, anybody for that matter. So the first that when we talk about the women, the first thing which comes in mind is she has something called I mean, I'm talking about why she there is a trust. So and why there is a guidance required. Women originally have trust in the partners, uh, their friends. We say that friends is he, she. So in all friends, they have a trust. So it's blind, and then slowly, that kind of a trust takes you that blind love. Blind love. It does not need to be that love bondage which we are talking about in actual life, but we are just talking about friends who have a bondage, and then they offer something. A person is not aware, not doesn't want to think, because see, friendship is all about trust, or any relationship is all about trust. So when this kind of a thing happens, it's an accidental case in her, the victim, where she gets drugged and she is not aware about anything which is given to her in terms of the liquid drink or a diet. She is completely unaware of it. In that process, when something happens, we do, as a journalist, when we are reporting, we do give a guideline. We put a small box to uh, every story. At least in print media, we do it. That we make a box and we say that when you are going, and wherever you are traveling, wherever you are going, don't have a blind faith. Now, see, the faith is all an individualistic question. So, a person going to a psychiatrist, telling the entire secret of life, and sharing so much anecdotes of the life, tomorrow it may become a wrong input, or a person going to a legal fraternity, telling the suffering, may turn back. So that way you have to, one has a nature originally that you keep a trust. So we do give guide in terms of whenever you are going, whenever you are traveling, wherever you are going with your friends, one does that way. So make sure you are going at your known places. You know which places you are going. There is no spike in the, matlab, you will not come to know about the spike drinks unless you have consumed it. That trust, the nature, where we need to understand that nowadays lot of things are going on in shows, crime shows on TV. So they do guide when on in for women also, that there is a body language. As a psychiatrist also, they guide that there is a body language. You might have a blind trust on anyone, but you can understand somebody who is having a wicked mind. The first notion click gives you that tinkle bell, and maybe a person doesn't realize, because our association obviously takes you to that level that you don't want to even you acknowledge it. You ignore, your body ignores it. So even in the crime shows, they are guiding that don't have a blind faith wherever you are traveling, or whichever place you are going. It needs to be your known place. You should not One should not be traveling to strange places, having to the strange outdoor places. That's one of the things. Second, when we talk about this kind of a thing, which I'll tell you as a while reporting, we observe whatever is being reported, most of it in terms of spiked drinks and drugs and rape, it goes underreported. It or it does not get underreported is a wrong terminology. I would like to apologize. It does not get reported in the police station. So that's because a girl gets into self guilt, self killing mode, that I trusted my friend, whoever is your inner circle friend or your outer circle friend, has misused the trust and has spiked your drink, eventually led to you in such a kind of a situation where you have lost your dignity, you have lost your honor, uh, you have lost something called the you have lost the honor of vagina, which is completely wrong and a myth. whenever we have girls around us, we need to tell them that this can happen and there is nothing wrong about it. One needs to confide with family about it so that we come to know that if this happens to you, you can bring it to the knowledge. So whenever we are reporting, we ensure that we talk with the parents also. We appreciate, we try to cover, we do not give the identity of the victims. As it is after Supreme Court guidelines, we do not give the identity of the victims. Also, the name of the alleged accused is withheld. So that way we only give the scenario. We do not identify the name of the places they are staying, but we try to give the entire narrative of the situation where these things has happened, so that whenever it comes in media, at least girls, teenage girls, or for that matter, a woman, any woman, if it happens, they can understand that this can happen with anyone. And I'm telling you that it's my 20 years experience that it doesn't come to the police station usually because they feel why did they drink it? Like Janvi Gadkar's case, only in short, I would like to tell you, there was a drunken drive case. I suppose Mumbai being a Mumbaikar and it has come in lot much on the media. She was she was drunk and then she was smoking. So everyone came up with the conclusion that her character is bad, and it was a simple drunk and drive, you are fined, you are charged. But everyone, she was a corporate liar, everyone from media across city started doing her character assassination. So this can happen. This is a very natural process. A girl or a woman, for that matter, anybody needs to understand that in case you come across this kind of a situation, you have lost your mental ability because of any alcoholic influenced drink. Do not feel that this is something gone wrong about it. You cannot share. One should come forward, talk about it, and there is nothing called losing virginity. There is always a next door. That's why I had started with Kinjal, Amrita Pritam's poem. That it's not the patriarchal society is not about just raising the voice in the secretariat, in the parliament, or in the news media. It's also raising the voice or letting the child speak at the home. Like when you're talking about the reason, I would like to, Kinjal, I hope I have time for 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
thank you, Kinjal. Uh, so, why it doesn't get reported to the police station when I'm talking about? Because, see, we say whenever girl is dating, I'm talking about when she's dating a boy, a date is a date. So parents do not ask the question, how was your date or did you do it? When you have, I'm talking about the entire different panorama. When you have a male child, a boy child, and when your son goes on a date, you definitely parents ask, did you do it? Did you kiss her? So see, the upbringing of children needs to be corrected. We need to inculcate the values in children that they need to understand that if any kind of a thing happens, I am in a family, my parents are in a family, that I can talk with them. I am not treated as a girl child or a boy child. I'm treated as a child. That's the reason girls, despite drinking, despite coming several times, I'm telling you, it happens several times with the girls and in the high profile families, that they get under the influence of drugs. They end up doing this. Eventually, the friend of theirs, he blackmails them, he misuses the girl. It keeps on happening for years. They need, so we have psychiatrist on our panel. She would be in a better situation to tell you exact data also. They have to eventually seek the help of psychiatrist, or eventually that the marriage comes, or they commit suicide. This is all because that the question is also, just see that the question is also coming from the college group, which is really going through all these things, because in friends you do not get into that zone of not trusting your friend. You have to trust your friend. If you don't trust, the person is not your friend. You don't look into eyes, is not your friend. For that matter, you have a trust, you will trust completely, and women definitely trust completely. That's the reason whenever is this kind of the, although it is reported in police station, very minimal level, but despite that, whenever it comes, we try to not to name the name of the victim, even the accused who misuses his friend, and in fact the very obscene pictures during all those things are shared by all, and eventually it leads to something like boys locker room, something like friends want to share the same female. So it is definitely important. I would like to conclude on this one of the things. While, because if patriarchy is, it is not something which is started by somebody, some one of the chapter, and it is read and it is over. It is running in the blood of man. Man thinks that she is my property, she is my object, under the influence of some sort of a drink. If she is not ready to come like that, I can get her. Her body can be mine. That girls needs to understand that that's not the situation, and if it happens, trust me, this is the reason we are all gathered together and having a media munch under the leadership of your prestigious college and the principal, Dr. Samant, that there is nothing wrong if something happens. We need to be vocal about it. So patriarchal society will remain, but parallel to that, there should be a society within women also. We can all connect. So there is nothing called that after 20 years a woman will come and she'll say that, oh, me too. So I suppose I tried, Kinjal, I suppose I tried covering your both the questions, and in fact the overview of the thing, which was really very important, because we see on the what happens on the field in the police stations, like now no more I go to the police stations, but we have to definitely see what happens, how girls are treated if they come to police station to lodge the complaint. So it sabotages the entire family, entire everything. So it is important. And if it happens, there is nothing as such wrong. I think so. We need to teach the patriarchal society is going to remain. What we need to teach everyone, I mean, especially women out there and the girls, that you need to be vocal. You need to be vocal. Whatever happens, say Seedha and Saral. This has happened. Thank you so
Yes,
much,
ma'am.
Kinjal.
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Very rightly said. Okay, so finally concluding, Hemal ma'am, would you like to suggest our students on what safety measures they need to take as to protect or safeguard their rights when it comes to any violation of their rights?
Kinjal, yes, I believe it was been very rightly portrayed by Santoshi ma'am about certain set of safeguards, but legally, I'd really like to throw some light over certain things. One, whenever you face such kind of incidents, firstly, on the legal perspective, is to make sure that you do not panic, or might as well uh, just go to some nearest place where you can be trustworthy with somebody else, and then try and lodge a complaint as soon as possible, because there are certain evidences in the court of law wherein corroboration, wherein sheer corroboration of evidences are being clearly taken in the court, uh, wherein the judges don't really entertain such complaints if it has been taken after a really long period of time. Second, understand this for a fact that leave your details about where you go or where you do not go to somebody. Uh, could be a parent, could be a friend, and that's also fine. Third, is to make sure that even if you lodge a complaint, you do not maintain any kind of contact with against the person against you've lodged a complaint with, because there are very high chances wherein the lawyers or wherein the victims get in the witness box, the lawyers corroboratively just put certain kind of evidences saying that since she was already in a relationship, or there was a consensual sex about it. Well, however, in certain other matters it is not. So these are three basic important things which I'd really like to suggest from a legal point of view in order to understand and in order to save yourself from all the legal safeguards. But of all the matters, I'd really like to say complain as soon as you can, or might as well keep certain NGOs under your lookout. There are a lot of NGOs that work for free that allow people to complain, or they allow people to just complain on their behalf. So I think that should really help.
Okay, it was lovely having all the panelists. I would really like to thank Dr. Mala Kharkar ma'am, our principal, Rimma Quadros ma'am for giving such a good opportunity and accepting the topic and giving us such platform to speak about. So I would and all the students who have contributed, and I would really like Rimma ma'am to give her vote of thanks.
Good evening again, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you, Kinjal ma'am. And I am sure our students have learned a lot today. Like I always say, we are not here to change your opinion. We are here to shape it in the way we can, which can suit the modern society or the challenges that you're going to face in near future. So thank you very much. I would like to thank all the panelists and all the participants also. And I take this opportunity to propose vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar. Even though we are physically far, but activities like this help us stay connected. Thank you all the panelists for devoting your precious time and sharing such valuable insights with us. It was really empowering. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I am sure our students are enlightened, have got insight related to the topic. If not 100%, but definitely some impact it has created in all our minds. Dear students, I know you have never ending questions, and trust me, we will be sharing our email IDs with you so you can probably get back to us. We are thankful to our principal, our CEO, Dr. Mala Kharkar, Chief Coordinator, Dr. BM Rai, and the management of the college for constant motivation and enthusiastic support. A special thanks to the organizing committee, Ginjal Ma'am, Sunil Sir, the teaching staff from other department, the non-teaching staff for their support and coordination. Our heartfelt thanks to our students. There are some students who have worked with us day in and day night in order to make this event successful. So thank you very much to those students and all the participants for active participation. With these warm words and kind message, we move to the end of today's webinar. Thank you everybody. Thank you panelists. Have a great weekend. Stay home, stay safe. The link for the feedback will be shared in your group. Kindly fill on the feedback form. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all the panelists. It was lovely having you all on board. A special thank to Rimma ma'am for really conducting this, and special thank to few students who have really worked hard, Shweta, Nachiket, Chinmay, and many more. Uh, have a great evening, and I hope that you have got the crux of the session, that it's a learned behavior. Nothing comes by birth. So I hope there might be certain change in you or in your vision. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you for having
You
us. And it was
all the
lovely to meet all of you.
participants.
That
Thank
was
you. Thank you
fantastic.
so
Thank
much.
you,
Thank
fellow
you.
panelists. And thank you, everyone,
Thank
for the
you.
Thank you all
opportunity.
the panelists and the
Good to
organizers.
connect.
Thank you.
Dear
Happy
participants,
weekend, panelists.
yeah. Dear participants, link has been posted in the chat box. Kindly fill the feedback form for your e-certificates. Be patient, your e-certificates will be delivered to you soon. Thank you,
Thank
panelists.
you.
You may
Thank you, Angel.
disperse.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, Ami.
Bye, Himal. It was great to meet you. Bye,
It
Santoshi,
was
ma'am.
great to meet you. I am so happy to listen to you, Ami. I'm really happy.
We should definitely connect offline. Maybe I can send my contact information to Rima and she can send it to you. Rima, ma'am, is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that. I would love to talk to you more about your work.
Same. Thanks,
Yeah.
Ami. See ya.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.
Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me? Participants, please, after filling your feedback form, you can leave the group. Kindly disperse. The link would not be shared on WhatsApp group. The link is shared in the chat box. Please fill the feedback form and leave the group.
Thank you, ma'am. Nice session.